gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Bowls Breakdown Podcast with your host Mike and Matthew Reese. Today we are delighted, good friend of ours and our very own guest from Virginia Municipal, Ken Taylor. Thank you for coming.
No, thank you for the invitations.
He's worried he is because you haven't got a clue what's going to go on.
No, I haven't.
Because he's out of phone. He's not comfortable.
We might need some subtitles halfway through this. So obviously today we're just going to be talking about kind of your role in Virginia Municipal, really, kind of obviously the volunteer work you do for our club. But before we dive into that, let's get to know a little bit about your bowls background. So how did it start and where did it start for you, from what you can remember?
What I can remember, we used to always go on holiday in Scotland and Glasgow. We used to always go away to places like Scarborough, Morecambe, places like that. And my father never played bowls, but we'd always end up on a bowl screen somewhere playing. I think that's my earliest memory of playing bowls. Never took any interest in it. Other than that, it was only on holiday. You know, as you did, played pitch and putt, played sandcastles, did whatever you were going to do, yeah. And it was traditional sort of British holiday places. We had these facilities available in those days, didn't we?
Yeah.
Then when I started playing bowls, it was 1999, I think it is. I was having some issues, personal issues, etc., as we all do. And my father-in-law played bowls. Wife Deb, she played bowls years and years ago. And my mother-in-law played bowls. They all played bowls at different clubs. And I was just chatting to my father-in-law, and he says, "Well, come along, can I have a roll up and knock our indoor bowls?" And that's what it started, basically.
Yeah. Now look back since.
Well, yeah, I did. I gave up the indoor bowls more than I played indoor bowls, but yeah, that was the basics of it, really.
Obviously, you're probably one of our first guests on that we know your game quite well. I mean, obviously, I've played with you quite a bit, obviously, in Virginia last, so you kind of would have been my mentor for my first outdoor season. So in terms of obviously your bowls career, and to get to where you are now, did you kind of envision you taking bowls as I know it's still not fully serious for you, but you still want to win and you still want to get better and stuff. So did you envision yourself taking it as serious as it's got for you over the years?
Probably not. Probably not. When I first started, I could see the potential of the bowlers I was playing against, how good they were. I've always tried to play sports competitively, you know. And then my family will tell you that.
Oh, we know that.
Oh, yeah.
We don't play Monopoly in our house. We don't play that.
We're going to come to that later.
We don't play darts. We don't do anything like that, you know. We've tried it, you know, got a t-shirt.
Even Monopoly's competitive, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. There's allegedly cheating goes on in our family, but I don't know if it started now or not. So you've always got that in the back of your mind. But when I started playing bowls, it was purely social. And it just developed from there, really. I went to play in Bridgend private originally. I think that was in 2000. I started 99, 2000 in Orgo, and then I went 2000, I think I started in the private. And they had a hell of a squad of players there on that day. You couldn't get in the second. I've said to you before, you couldn't get in the second team. You know, there was 40 plus names down. We're just delighted to get a reserve place at times, you know. But that then gives you a little bit of ambition. You think, well, wait a minute now, I'm playing with these boys during the week for roll-ups, or in the day we used to play spoons, really competitive spoons. And that was a funny little story. The very first time I played spoons, right, I never played bowls. Well, I played bowls, but not proper bowls. I was told that you can't win a spoon because you're not a proper member. I just looked at the guy, a lovely old boy, Quinn Phillips. I just looked at him. Are you serious? Have you seen me playing bowls? That's how competitive. That was supposed to be the next spoons. I found the next was supposed to be non-competitive, and that's how competitive it was.
You know, for people who might listen or watch this podcast, isn't that the same across the whole country? You've got clubs who have been at their highest, where they've had squads of that 40, and you can't get in the team, and then 10 years later, you know, it's like they're at the bottom of that league, and it sort of swings and roundabouts for all the clubs.
It is. I think back in the day there was a reluctance in a lot of clubs to take on new members. Either And they felt they had too many members for the size of clubs they had, or they were very set in their own ways, shall we say. And that was always going to be a problem. What we found in the private when I was there, that the second team was a very good team. PG1 team was fantastic. They were in PG1 league back in the day all the time. Never done very well with the Crovers, mind. I don't understand that. But the PG2 team were all of an age. And those boys all grew old together. They probably started, I don't know, maybe in their 50s, 60s. But they all grew old together and they all left. It seemed like overnight we dropped a whole team of bowlers. It wasn't like that, obviously, but that's what it felt like. And all of a sudden then people were skating around trying to find players.
I think it's within traditional clubs, I think in the modern game now, where we play these private leagues, and I appreciate there's other leagues, Carmarthenshire, Pembrokeshire, up in Mid Wales. There's lots of Leith leagues, there's lots of good leagues about it, but certainly within the EPG, the clubs that are now established good clubs, and the best bowlers tend to go to those clubs, don't they? To pick up a good bowlers when you're coming down the leagues is hard to come by. We had Nicky Jones on, for example. Nicky and Chum were both in Ystwyfechan and now gone to the Harlequins, So Harlequins are just going to get stronger, and I'm sure teams like RTB, Ebervale and Pennlands, they're just going to get stronger. And then the others just try and pick up and try and compete.
Yeah. But I think there's definitely a place for the other teams as well.
Oh, of course there is, yeah.
And so-called community clubs are social. Bridgend Municipal was always known as a social club, not a bowling club. No. And there is a place, not anymore, no. Although it's got a good social side as well, isn't it?
You've got a bit of both.
You've got to have that competitiveness as well. If you want to drive the team forward, drive the club forward, then you've also got to have the respect of all the other members that don't want to do that.
That's right, yeah. There's room for everything.
Not a problem, really.
Speaking of competitiveness, we know, obviously, we've known you now for a few years, really, and we know how much you like people who want to get better.
Yeah.
We've talked about it before. We've talked about obviously doing things on certain nights. So, where does that? I mean, obviously, I know you're a competitor. Where's that drive to kind of get everyone else on that competitiveness for you, just to try and drive them forward? Where's that come from for you?
I don't know, really. I looking back, I was always involved in things. I when the kids were growing up, I was coach for the local football team and trying to keep that going and involving people and getting new players in and developing those players. That's what I was about.
Yeah.
I was with them for 7 years doing that. And then seeing, obviously, my older boy then, he was playing for the private as well, and going down there and watching them develop. And I think you get that, in a bowl sense, you get that from the experienced players within your club, especially boys that have been there, well, ladies, I suppose, have been there for a long time. I've never really come across many bowlers that are not willing to give you time if you ask for help.
Yeah.
Of any age and experience, especially the older ones, or not the older, more experienced ones.
Yeah. They always seem to be ones that are more open to helping out.
They are, yeah, and you found that in other sports. You play golf as a youngster with your kin and everything. But I'm of an ethos. I'm sorry if this is wrong, but for any youngsters who are involved in sport, yes, it's nice if they enjoy the game.
Yeah.
But eventually, you want them to be successful. It is about success.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah. Especially if you're invested in the sport, right? You talk about it for a lot of people. There's a time where people are going to just want to play sociably, which is completely fine. But then again, you don't want someone who's not willing to put the effort in to keep your team. Like I know, Municipal, we just got up to Division 4 ourselves. We're looking to get better day in, day out. We're trying to push to that Division 3 now over the next maybe 2-3 years if we can. But we all want to get better. And there's a place for both, really, and especially at bigger clubs, you need a place for both.
And you've got to encourage people to play that. As in, you've got to spend time with them. If you think of Nick in our club last year, the start of last year, he was awful. You see himself, absolutely awful. He didn't know where he was coming or going. Didn't know. His head was shot, and we spent about 2 or 3 weeks constantly just going down and saying, right, oh, bowl. Don't think about it, just bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Put little aids out to help. Kane came down one night and he played as well. And his game changed dramatically.
Yeah.
And you get a little bit of pride with that as well yourself,
yeah.
because you're thinking, well, I've helped somebody here to enjoy what they're doing, because
he lost the enjoyment, didn't he? He lost the enjoyment as well.
I mean, I've been there. It took me years and years and years to get comfortable with a ball screen. You know, playing with decent bowlers. It's difficult. It is difficult.
And it sometimes takes kind of that step back in the game. You know, we obviously know Nick was playing 3 quite often last year or the year before, and then obviously struggled a little bit, got dropped a second, and it just takes sometimes that little bit of knock to say, like, next 3 weeks we're going down. And especially someone like you. I mean, I know how many people you've helped in Bridgend over the couple of years. Me last year, Adam for previous years. But obviously Nick, God knows how many other people that you've helped.
That's just payback from people that helped me.
Yeah.
You know, that's all it is payback. That's how I learned the game.
And it's, as you see, that then people want to be competitive. It's sort of, they're not just there for enjoyment. They want to be competitive and they want to get better. And that's fair, but, you know, all sides. So Scotland obviously is home for you.
Yeah.
Was home for you.
Yeah. I had my own way, might still be. Not going to happen now.
So Scotland was home for you. Yeah. And we're going to come on to, you know, and then obviously, when did you move to Wales?
92.
92. And you met Deb, is that the reason why you come down here?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, she's got to be a good Welsh woman, get the story.
Well, there was, met after a mutual friend, and I came down here to see him. I was living in London at the time, up in Croydon, and came down here to meet him. I'd been living with him up in Croydon, Wimbledon area, studying that. So I came down to see him, and then he was working with Deb. So that's when we went out for a night, and I met Deb through him. Yeah. He's now a priest now, vicar.
Did he marry you? No. So Deb was bowling then anyway, but she was bowling at that time. She wasn't bowling, but
her parents were bowling.
Yeah.
And they were, well, my father was never a competitive bowler.
Right.
You know, he was an old-fashioned PG2 bowler.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was half decent bowler.
Yeah. And just enjoyed his game.
He wouldn't even know sometimes if he'd won or lost. It used to frustrate me. Even then, it used to frustrate me. I think her mother was more competitive.
Right.
And then she was playing when she was 12 to 14, something like that. Okay. She wasn't bowling.
And then she sort of went away from bowling. So she bowled as a youngster, went away from bowling. So you got together, and then somehow you both started bowling again.
Yeah, well, I started up first. And then she was, well, we were both working full time, I think, at the time. I remember exactly where she was. And through time, then the kids get a little bit older. And then both my boys bowled in the level.
We are going to come to them, boys, in a second. But before that, up to Deb's parents, who do you think was the best bowler, a mother or a father?
I never ever saw mother bowl.
Very diplomatic answer.
When I knew her, when I first got to know them, she was bowling, but she wasn't bowling for much longer after that, through health issues. I get the impression that she was probably a better bowler.
More competitive bowler, you said, probably.
I would think so, from what I can remember.
So we know where Debs gets it from then.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. We got obviously a little bit to talk about. So main reason, obviously, we wanted to have you on the podcast is you do a lot for our club, right? Not only do you do greenkeeping, which we will come to the large part of that towards the end of the podcast, but you're also a men's secretary as well.
Yeah.
So what does that look like in terms of as a club? What kind of some of the roles you do? What kind of some of the responsibilities that entail with that for you?
Where to start? We've in our club, for anybody else that's watching, the one or two people out there, for our club, we've got directors, haven't we?
Yeah.
They're responsible for the whole Bowls club.
Yeah.
We've got social side, you're heavily involved in. And we've got the traditional male and female sections. So my responsibility is anything to do with the men's playing side. That entails we're in 4 leagues, I think. So that entails
4 weeks, yeah.
and that entails me having to go to various meetings, pre-season meetings, EGMs, general meetings, represent the club. Normally we have somebody else with us. So we've got private greens, we've got midfield, we've got Vale Morgan. We're a bit unique in our place because we've got 2 counties within one effectively. So that's double the meetings, isn't it? Yeah. The Talbot triples, and you've got the Rockwell triples as well.
Yeah.
So there's a lot involved in that. So basically, my all rules responsibility is to do with anything to do with the playing side of Bridgend Municipal, those clubs, men's section.
And for people listening or watching, that's time consuming, isn't it?
Hard work.
It can be. You go through phases. At the end of the season tends to be the biggest time. You know, we've got our own club finals that we get quite heavily involved in, and we've got a presentation, and then we seem to go at the end, our AGM. But then at that point, somewhere along the line, we start hitting all the other AGMs, and they have Talbot and midfield actually this last season, and then the season meetings, and then they had their AGMs. You know, I never understood what the difference was between the two of them, to be honest. But it's a lot of travelling with regards to the meetings, and it takes up your time, but it comes and goes. You know, it's
and people don't see that time, do they? That's the thing. No. We're going to come to the other time you spend, because you must spend an awful lot of time doing stuff, but we'll come to that. Yes. I'm just curious, one of the recent was it the EPG? Was that an AGM that you've just been to?
Yeah.
I want to just, because I wasn't at that meeting, I just want to delve into the little bit of, obviously, the big news that came out of that meeting, I think, was probably that women can now play in the EPG.
Yeah.
From my perspective, I know people have different views. I think that's a wonderful news for our Welsh international ladies team. I think they're going to be playing at a bigger level. Yeah, they're going to be playing in leagues in the EPG Division 1, 2, which is really going to be against some of the best men bowlers in Wales. So I think that's only going to develop our ladies international team. What was the meeting like when that sort of came up? Is there anything you read then, divulge? Was there any, or was it quite plain sailing through and voted it in?
Well, this is only the second AGM I've been with the private greens, because I think we've only been in 3 years, haven't we? I wasn't involved the first year.
Yeah.
So last year I went to the very first one, and it was quite busy, and it was quite. There's a lot of discussion on the ladies' side, but that was a different motion. That was just a very small part of the EPG league structure. I was talking about involving ladies, girls into the EPG league.
Yeah.
We got the impression of the meeting. I mean, I didn't know very many people there. I've got to be honest. I don't know what clubs they were representing them. A little bit more knowledge now. There wasn't a lot of dissent. It was very, very positive, to be fair.
Okay.
Just that they hadn't actually asked the question. It dragged up. These meetings do. There's always somebody, right? There's always somebody got a hearing aid that's not on, right? And you're sitting there and you go through the whole bloody thing, right?
You're all right.
You go through the whole thing, and then somebody will raise a point, and everybody's heads just drop. And you think, we just discussed that 20 minutes now, and you just asked the same question. You can see them there, the hearing aid's not on. But a lot of these meetings are there's passionate people in there, but there's realistic people as well. You know, it's not going to change the world, any of these decisions. So we went forward to this year's meeting then. I always had the impression that it would be quite positive.
Right.
And what I was a little bit disappointed. I don't know if there's any reason behind it, but last year I think there was 27 clubs represented in that EPG meeting. It was quite full with the Oldham and Calder Bowls Club in the back room, so it was quite not much room to breathe like. But this year there was only 22 teams turned up, or 22 clubs turned up, according to the meeting rules.
And I think there's about averaging 7 or 8 in a league.
So you've got 2 teams and so on.
Yeah, we have. Yeah.
I estimated that top of my head when I was there. I went in the 2 as well. Like only one could go, the other one could go to the meetings. I thought between 35 and 40 clubs possibly could have been there. So that was the first thing that surprised me, because obviously we get notification prior to the meetings, all the meetings, about any proposals. So then when we get that proposal, we have to then speak to our committee and perhaps even to our members, like we did at our last AGM. So I was surprised that there wasn't more clubs there for such a quite an important discussion, because the meeting just ran right through until we got to those points, the proposition points. And I say it was very well managed, it was well discussed. There was a few people chatting over each other, but once they sorted that out, and it was mainly positive, there was a few clubs that voted against it.
Yeah.
The vast majority voted for it, and they all had their reasons for doing it.
The big surprise, I think, coming from it for me was obviously there was talks about maybe having a maximum of 6 women, or 1 per rink, or this, that, and the other. But they've obviously gone through and just made it. Women are just now accepted to play with no real restrictions. So that was probably the big. I thought they would have gone with it. I didn't think they'd have gone to it straight into the manner of.
I was surprised as well.
Yeah.
I was surprised. We discussed it at our committee and we were for it.
Absolutely.
There's no.
We've got 2 Welsh international women in our club.
As a club, we've always tried, since we took over the club officially from the council, it's been one club.
Yeah.
Everything we do is for one club.
Yeah.
So we could see the benefits of it. There's going to be issues with it as well, obviously. We see the benefits of it, but we pushed it through anyway.
Well, it's history now.
Yeah.
It is. And for me, I think it's a good move. And let's have a look what the season brings in April. In April. So,
thanks for insight on this.
Yeah, I put you on the spot there. Now you've insight into that meeting. And
careful what I say.
Now you've watched some of the podcasts in the past. This is a segment we like to.
I can honestly say I've watched all of them.
Oh, thank you, sir. Very appreciated.
I wish you to sleep easy. I tell you what. If you've got sleeping problems, just listen to you.
Yeah, I do talk a lot. Oh, thanks. You talk. So, obviously, driving questions. Our segment is just something to break up all of the talking. Quick 5 questions, 5 of them. Try and think of an answer as quickly as possible. Some goals related, some not. Bear in mind, we have thrown you under the bus on one of these, so we knew you'd appreciate that. So, you ready to go?
Yeah.
Okay, so, first question. Prefer cutting the green or playing on the green?
Cutting.
Number 2, best haggis you've ever had?
Best haggis?
Haggis.
There's
an obvious answer you should say.
It's probably one called Kenny's or something. No?
Mags!
Well, Mags? Mags cut haggis.
No idea.
We had a fantastic haggis up, and we went to Scotland, Loch Gilhead it was, a family holiday. And this tiny little village.
No, this is a quick fire.
And they did it the old, I don't know if you've seen it, you put the towers, you put mashed potatoes on the bottom, your neeps in the middle, and your haggis on top, and then it's a whiskey sauce on top.
So that's the best answer then.
Well, I got it well. So somebody quite close to me does make them quite regular, so she doesn't do too bad.
Okay. So question number 3, rank the bowlers in your family, you, Deb, Sean, 1, 2, and 3.
Quick fire.
Quick fire. Right. Quick fire as in now or
yes,
previously?
No, now.
Right. Deb, me, Sean. Okay. You'll kill me.
Number 4, the most memorable bowls moment you've had.
Most memorable bowls moment? I think it was when Sean got to the under 16s Welsh final. When he played Jared Green. It was on the telly. Back in the day.
Yeah.
Number 5, would you prefer to win the Cruthers or win the Welsh national singles?
Oh, that's a good question. You're not going to win either of them.
I said you.
I know.
Which one would you prefer to win if you could win?
Cruthers.
I thought you might say that.
And we did think you might say that as well, because you were a team man.
Yeah,
you are a team man.
Well, that might have been the slowest driver question.
I don't mind. Nicky's was bad, isn't it?
We start with
ice cream talk.
Yeah, ice cream talk. What was it now?
We were going to ask a question, and for those of you that are watching, it's a bit of an inside joke. We were going to ask you, would you prefer the top of the stairs or the bottom of the stairs?
Right.
In the house. What's on the top of the stairs?
Oh, right, yeah. No, top of the stairs.
Deb's got something from a Welsh international days, and she's the top of the stairs.
Got a Welsh
But we didn't want to know.
Obviously, we'll dive into it a little bit, because obviously, just like our family, there's quite a few in your family now playing bowls, all in the same club. Obviously, you've got yourself, Deb, who's a very successful women's player. Obviously, we picked for the Welsh national team next week.
This weekend, yeah.
And then Sean, my county partner.
Your county partner.
My county
I know
partner.
when you've got your county draw as well.
Do you actually?
Yeah. I see what kind of questions you answer me now, and I'm getting the answer.
Well, the questions are done. So now we're going to talk about what I know is your baby.
Yeah.
Greenkeeping. So you are our volunteer greenkeeper, pretty much our head greenkeeper. You look after our green from Monday to Sunday, morning to night. You're down there, obviously, all the time, right? How much effort does it take? And I know the answer to this, but obviously for the people watching, how much effort does it take to actually care for a green as a volunteer for the club?
It could take over your life. Tell you that for a fact. Sometimes, not a lot going on, and I'll think, what am I going to do now? End up painting the fence today because I didn't want to go down the green. I'm not going to have to paint that fence. But it can take over your life. But it's at the end of the day, it's grass.
Satisfactory work as well.
Yeah, it's satisfaction. It's one of the things I enjoy most is dealing with the green. I know you say a head keeper or whatever.
Our appointed head keeper.
Yeah. There's a group of us down there, yourself.
Yep.
You've been there a couple of times, haven't you? No. I thought you've been there a couple of times.
Lloyd has.
Lloyd has, yeah. That's right. I knew.
And the one thing I want to make is there's lots of greenkeepers out there doing great work on every green, across all of Wales. Yeah. So, how they relate to this, and all the members relate to what you're going to say now.
Well, the real thing for us is obviously, for you and how much time and effort we see you put into that green, and probably others at different clubs, as members don't see it, right? No. Talk us through kind of what is your general, or our general, I could say, kind of go-to structure of how we deal with the green. So we go down how many times a week? Roughly, in the summer.
In the summer, we're down 3 times a week minimum. That's just the cup. Mm-hmm. So we tend to go down, don't we? Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays.
Yeah.
It's not set in stone, because sometimes ladies get a game Monday night, so we have to go there Monday. But generally speaking, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays. In addition to that, especially in the height of the season, not so much when it's boiling hot, but it's when we start bowling now, May time. There's other days where a few of us might go down and do some 30 cuts in, some sorrel rolling. Mm-hmm. We're lucky we've got 2 lawnmowers. Very lucky, But we've also got an issue where one of them does everything and the other one does cuts grass. So when we've got both of them up and running, it's fantastic.
Just follow each other along.
And that's what you need, because we've got at least, probably on those days, we've probably got at least 3, if not 4 people there, haven't we?
Oh yeah.
So you've got you've got one person cutting, and we try and split it so we don't kill people.
Yeah.
So half, you shouldn't really be doing more than half the green in the summer yourself if you do it regular. You've always got somebody doing the ditches and all the rest of it. You need that group of people. Yeah. And we're going to struggle, I think, in the next 12 months because of different personal situations. But you need, I think, to do that green, you need 7 to 8 dedicated people. They don't have to be down 3 times a week. We try not to do that. We try and split it. But you need that kind of volume of people.
Yeah, especially when you're doing kind of the whole thing. I know Tuesdays obviously was our kind of our verti cut, our sorrel roll, our surrounds, kind of our big day of doing things. Saturdays we just cut the green, so 2 people were pretty much enough on a Saturday just to cut. But when you're doing that bulk load of work, you've got so many people down. Like you said, in the summertime, you've got 2 or 3 people needed to cut and sorrel, sometimes even 4 just to kind of swap around. And then you're doing the surround stuff, you're doing your edges, you're doing your ditches, making sure that looks nice. And all the, especially start of the season with all the leaves, or end of the season with all the leaves that can come around
It's
on
a
the
nightmare. It's a nightmare.
Yeah. So for me, from some of you, then I don't do greens. I do social. Yeah. So the importance of changing settings. What is that importance of changing the settings on a regular basis?
Yeah, it's a good question. A lot of clubs I think they would have, one of the things we do now, remind me of your question in a minute, one of the things we do now quite a lot when we go to other greens is we look at things, and we're checking what they've got. We're checking what their ditches are like, and we're checking, we don't have got a weed, we haven't got a weed, rubbish, What was your question again?
Settings.
Settings. We've noticed that a couple of clubs have got just 2 settings. But traditionally you always had 3 settings, and that was because it's wear and tear on the green effectively, and stopping channels. A number of clubs will have fantastic bowlers that will want to play on a rink Monday to Sunday on a certain colour.
Okay.
Yeah. And the green, we don't have that so much of a problem in our club. There are a lot of new bowlers in our club.
Yeah.
But that must be a nightmare for the greens team of those clubs, because all you end up doing is creating channels in the green if you're not careful.
Yeah.
There is ways around it.
Yeah.
If you're just a basic greenkeeper.
We swap the green both ways as well, do we? We play across one way and we play then the other way.
We've got 6 sets, if you think about it. Both ways, 3 both ways.
Is that something you're considering going to 2 settings both ways, or you stay with 3?
I think we'll stay in 3. I don't see it as a big issue in our club.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to keep your good settings for your what I classify as our main matches. I'm only talking about the men's side now, because obviously that's all I can talk about. But we always play in a certain colour for what tends to be the weekend matches, whatever weekend matches we got. And that's important. So if you don't know your own green, if you suddenly come down, and it happened to us once, we were playing a game 4 or 5 years ago, 5-6 ends in, somebody said, nobody's changed the settings. We were playing with our own settings. Whether it was any better or any worse, but in my head, my game went to pot then. So I'm thinking, oh my God, why are we playing
I don't know these
settings?
I don't know these settings.
It's interesting to mention, obviously, that in terms of you have your go-to settings, right? We have our certain way, certain colour setting on the Saturday. I can remember we played a team last year in EPG, and they were talking about they changed the way that they bowl. I think we played together. We didn't. Might have been next to each other that game. But they said they used to play one way, kind of up and down away from the clubhouse, and then they went the opposite way. And they said ever since they've changed the way, they've struggled as a team to kind of get the results that they're after, because no one's used to that setting. And it's a total team advantage as well.
I think this is coming in my 4th year. So, but I remember my first year playing in EPG, we played from clubhouse away, didn't we? And now we don't play that. We play from the chalet to bunker. And that was a decision that obviously you come with you and the captain decided that it was a better option for us to play that way,
It's a more natural way to play.
But it's a lot of time, because I just made an idea. I have heard Deb say that, he loves his green more than he loves me. That's been said in the club on a Saturday night.
Yeah, that's been said.
Yeah, and sometimes
and can you
Sorry, Deb. And the other thing is, she keeps tab on your phone, doesn't she? And you disappear, going for a walk, and she'll know exactly where you've gone, because you've gone down to check.
I've got to speak to somebody about how I can get that off, just for temporary measures.
So, you spend...
a lot of the time I'll go down the game and I'll just walk around it.
Yeah.
And out of season anyway.
Inspect it.
Yeah, you're just looking for things. You're saying, that corner's pretty bad. Is that coming along? Or is one of the greens got a problem with it?
And you know what? Every greenkeeper who might be watching or listening to this will think, that is me. That is doing the same thing. And you know what? It was really, really interesting when we had Ross Owen on, and we all know how good a bowler Ross Owen is. And what does Ross Owen do? He cuts the green. He's one of the people who looks after the green, So even one of the top bowlers, and his thing is to go on and
the club needs volunteers.
The big thing is about 4 or 5 years we've been doing green now, and all the midfield clubs are basically doing their own greens now. I don't know of any that are not doing their own greens. And they were all council greens. And all due respect to the council, they weren't greenkeepers. They were cutting grass. Right?
It was just a job to do, wasn't it?
Yeah. So they could have been they could have been as conscientious as anybody, but they didn't have the tools, they didn't have the time.
Yeah.
So we noticed right away, as soon as people started looking after their own greens, how much they all improved.
Yeah.
You know, whether it was in machinery. To be fair, in Bridgend, we were all given a grant to take on the greens, and we got a machine out of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the improvement in all those greens was remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. It was like day and night, some of these greens. But what I've noticed now in the last 12 months is it's wearing off a little bit. You know, you've got a lot of clubs have got their greens up to a certain standard.
Yeah.
But they can't get to the next one. I don't know if it's volunteers, it might be financial, I don't know. Or it could even be, I've seen a change. I saw a photograph the other day on my iPad, and it was just one of the first years we took a photograph of the greens team. I think there's only me on that now, for all different reasons. Most of them are still in the club, but they've just got to an age where they couldn't do it anymore. So there is that as well. Some clubs might have taken it on 5 years ago, and it can be, it can be quite hard physical work, especially sometimes in the summer. Even at 9 o'clock in the morning, it's boiling hot.
I remember last year, right? We took probably on one Tuesday we took 3 hours to cut the green because we had to stop every 4 or 5 up and downs because you were just like sweating and you were knackered and you could feel it kind of get to you, and it's hard work, and that's why you need so many volunteers, especially from the greenskeeping.
So those bowlers out there, you've got to respect what the green staff, because you don't always see what the green staff do for you. We've been lucky. I played the fourth year coming up now, and our green has got better and better and better. And from the comments we have when people, however, there was one Saturday that somebody said that the green was shit and it did upset you. You had some choice words with the gentleman, and his game went to pieces after.
Yeah, I think we won after that.
We did win after. But there's always going to be somebody.
There's always going to be somebody, and on that occasion, it was totally on.
Of course it was. Yeah. But it does make me laugh because we can go away and we can say, well, that green is not the best, But
I think that's very important. But I really do think it's very important. When I first started bowling, I don't know whether the greens were good or whether I understood them. Right? I never heard anyone criticising a green during a match.
Mm-hmm.
There may have been a couple of comments after, and that's what I always say to people in our club. If the green's not great or there's a problem with the green, don't mention it there. Speak up about it afterwards if you want.
Be respectful.
Be respectful because somebody somewhere is doing their best with that green. Yeah, and it might be they've got no other choice.
No,
there's a big difference between someone saying, "Oh, that hand doesn't swing as much," or "that hand swings more," or "it's a bit slower there," or "a bit quicker than our green." That kind of stuff. Give advice to people who just try to adjust. If someone says, "Oh, this is crap," this green sucks, or anything.
But it was quite funny the other day. I got to say, it was funny the other day.
I was annoying myself because I did lose a big time with that fella.
And we leave it there because it was fun.
We were surprised with you love that green. So obviously, we talked a little bit of kind of like the reality of cutting the green, right? So obviously, summertime mainly you're just basically cutting, saw rolling, and verticutting for the majority of the summer, making sure it looks good for when you play. When you get to that later end of the season, and what kind of obviously starts to change, what the difference between your summertime jobs and then obviously the winter that we've had last year, and then obviously this year as well, it's been a little bit different.
Yeah. I mean, we're lucky we've got a contractor. Let's see.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you've got absolute grass care that we look after.
And we always say that, there are other contractors out there. Yeah. We just happen to use that one, and that's the way life is. Others use other contractors.
Well, we had a contractor before that, and there was nothing wrong with that contractor. It was just the location more than anything.
Yeah.
But Chris has come along, and going back to your question, a lot of what we do all year is determined by what he tells us. Yeah. It's getting less and less now because we're also a little bit more experienced as well. But there's always something you're not 100% sure about, you go and speak to him about. And to be fair to him, Christmas time he came down and done his December maintenance. You could see that our green was covered in one cast. And he came down the next day and stuck some solution on it, and the next we've not had any problems since.
And we did have problems with
We'll have them again because it's not guaranteed to. That is one of our major problems as a world podcast. Without somebody like Chris at the end of the phone, it would be a struggle, wouldn't it? Because when we first took it on, we thought it was about cutting grass. We're totally brutally honest. We thought it was nothing about cutting the grass. That was like secondary, innit?
There is an art in it, and there is a huge art in what you're doing.
You need the tools. You've got to have the tools. You've got to have the experience. And the other big thing you need is I'm not practical in any which way with machinery. If you've got a couple of people in your club that can actually say, if you've got a problem, can you have a look at this? Or can you have a look at that?
We can thank Malcolm for that.
Because if you haven't got that, you can stare at that machine for hours and you don't have a clue what to do.
And sending away, how many times we sent machinery away? It's been a month and a half.
Well, it's at least 6 weeks for end of season maintenance new machine. We've got one in at the moment. When the other one will go in, but this is the problem we've got. We don't know when to put the other one in because the other one is the one with all the cassettes. Right. So we're hoping to keep that till we have that height of summer weather when we won't need the cassettes and we can stick it in.
Well, we hope we have a height of weather this year. And,
well, it's been better this year than last year, as you.
And actually, that leads us lovely because if we have a lovely, beautiful weather like we had not last year, the year before, the dry weather. Some good news today. Our new watering system was being, and you haven't been even down to have a look.
I have. Not today.
He's been down.
I was down a few times last week. It's brilliant.
You'll be down tomorrow once you finish the test.
We'll be down tomorrow.
We're down tomorrow. We're down on Tuesday. It's brilliant news. We've had a lot of conversations the last couple of years about having some sort of irrigation system. Because all we had was a pipe and two sprinklers. And that was good. That was very good. But there's a lot of manual work in that.
It is,
and waiting around.
Somebody's got to turn it on and somebody's got to turn it off. And there'll be clubs out there doing the same thing. So I don't know much about it. We've gone obviously with a company. I don't know who that company. Do you know who that company is?
South Wales.
Rob's.
I think they're the same one who did Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
And they look like they're doing a great job, we can tell you more later when it's all finished and complete. I think we're going to capture some rainwater from our roof.
7,500 litres.
I think it was 7.5 litre. I thought that's not going to be so much grass.
Well, funny enough, it's 7,500 is not going to water much grass either in a dry spell.
But no, it's good for us. Obviously, last summer we struggled a little bit with dryness at places, and with obviously the amount of water we actually had to put on the green. And obviously, like I said, got the hose out, pretty much walked it around the green ourselves last year.
And that's an argument. That's an argument I've heard from a lot of experienced people that didn't actually recommend having an irrigation system.
Okay,
was that you might actually be better to walk around with a hose and do it. But that's all well and good, but that's a lot of time. And I think what we'll be doing this year and future years coming anyway, we'll be using the system. We'll also be going around times and doing that as well. Because it all depends on the weather.
The irrigation system is going to be great for us. It's obviously going to be automatic as well. Obviously, Rob's given us the download of it all. Just be able to press a button for how long, when to start, when to finish, and we know if we go down the green at that time, it should be at the end of it or finished or whatever, rather than having to turn it on. Because someone go down, turn it on.
It was a physical getting the sprinklers on and off because they're heavy. When they're full of water, they're heavy. And yellow pipes we've got. It's got to be better. It's going to hopefully it'll come on. They recommend something like 2:00 in the morning. So like 20 minutes, a few minutes.
So all the golf courses, obviously, golfing background, and the greenskeeper and the golf, they will always put their sprinklers on either right at the start of the night or really early in the morning, like 3-4 o'clock in the morning. Obviously, they're going to hold a lot more water than our green does because they're not surrounded by concrete like ours is, but they will put it on for 20 minutes. and then they're done, and that's what they do. I want to kind of jump back a little bit. Obviously, we did touch a little bit. You mentioned obviously the worm cats, and kind of going back to that differences between summer and winter jobs. Worm cats, what are they, and how do they kind of come up onto golf course, onto golf somewhere now? Bowls, greens.
Well, it's a sign of a good natural soil. To start, it's not a bad thing.
No.
But it's a hell of a bad thing when they come up. You know, I mean, last August, the weather was crap, wasn't it? I remember rightly.
Yeah.
Going into September, it didn't get much better. And one of the times we went down, still going down 2 or 3 times a week, weren't we? And one of the times, I'll never forget, we went down there, and the green was black, solid, and it's in Bridgend, we've got clay solid, and this stuff isn't. You can swish it as much as you like.
Don't break up.
It's not breaking up.
You have to go over it 2-3 times.
And we created our own little mat system, didn't we? Our drag mat.
Yeah.
And that does work, but that's a heavy job. You know, again, you need 2 or 3, 4 people to do that, as well as 2 or 3 people swishing. And the big problem with the worm cast isn't even the looking at the green or how it's going to play or whatever. The big problem with worm cast is it's getting rid of all that mud, you know, and it just doesn't look good, but it doesn't play well either. And if you've got people down there and they're bowling a ball, it's just going to stick in bloody mud, isn't it? It's horrible.
You know, so obviously, you know, your winter time is pretty much less about cutting the grass, right? The grass isn't growing too much, and more about making sure that obviously all the worm casts are out, all the leaves and stuff are off. Obviously, there's a few diseases that we get over, you know, nothing different to any other clubs. Most clubs have the issue of diseases, but obviously, like Chris has told us in the past, worm cast, leaf coverage can all create worse problems for that disease. Yeah. So that's why it's really important to go down, especially when he said get the worm cast up. So spray we needed every day we were down there. Yeah. So someone was down there every day, swishing, making sure that the debris was clear.
And that's another thing as well is there's 2 things. One is your machine is going to get affected, and that totally screwed up machine. 2 seasons ago, the last game of the season, or one of the last games of the season, we couldn't cut the green because both machines were knackered. We got them fixed very quickly with Chris's help a couple of days later. But that game, I think it was against Millwood 2 years ago, we had to apologise because we couldn't cut the green on the Saturday. Another problem is it creates, well, not the worm cast, but if you don't swish that top surface off with the dew in the grass, it can cause disease. And we saw it last year. We thought it was after they'd actually reseeded the green, wasn't it? And we saw the grass turning a little bit yellow. And none of us really we just assumed it was getting colder and just hadn't taken. But that was a disease on the green. And now if that happens, it took us about 2 weeks to get in touch with Chris. We'd seen it, I'd seen it, didn't realise what it was. When that if and when that happens again, hopefully it doesn't, we can then get in touch with Chris. He goes down, bang, puts his chemicals on there, and it should stop that scanning.
I will say as well, obviously we talked a lot about chemicals and having Chris come down. He does give us a rundown of everything that gets put on that green at the same time, and obviously we make logs of what we do every time we're down there, you know, just to make sure that it's still safe for people to bowl on the day after and that kind of stuff, which most, if not all, greenskeepers will be doing at their clubs, with the help of obviously if they've got a contractor and stuff. So, you know, there's a lot to it.
You've got to have certificates before you can put anything on the greens. Chris has always said to me, there's nothing he puts on that is going to be a danger to anyone. But he always like we always say, what we've seen people bowl and they've got the towel in their mouth and things like that.
I got having a lick in my fingers before I go anyway. I always do it.
So we always tell people that if what we've done in that green, make sure you just be careful and wash your hands, and it's up to you what you do after that.
But at least then there's some way recorded of what actually is on that green, just in case anything happens, and at least you can say, well, this is all that's been put on the green. So, you know, it helps that way as well. So I do want to obviously say we do follow protocol at the same time. We're not just throwing chemicals on our
we don't throw any chemicals. It's all done by contract. We're lucky enough that we've got a contractor who's very good. And he explains to us, you've been there, and he explains what he's done, etc. And a lot of the time, because we just sort of, it goes over our heads big time, and we're getting more understanding.
You carry on, we'll just watch. but obviously they got their bigger machines and stuff. So obviously, with time again, no cutting, more soil rolling, more making sure we're looking for diseases, swish, and that kind of stuff in terms of, but it's still a lot of work.
Yeah.
People again, we do go down to maybe 2 or 1 day a week. Obviously, in the summer, it doesn't require so much cutting, which is in the winter, which doesn't require so much of that kind of that manual cutting, but it's still a lot of work.
Everyone, since I've been doing it and what I've been reading and the contractors that I had, the 2 contractors, I've always said you need to be cutting it once a week. That can be quite hard in the weather that we have, especially if it's wet and damp and the green's covered in bloody lawn cast. But this year has been since Christmas, been not too bad. And I've been cutting it every week, apart from 1 week, 3 weeks ago in that really cold spell, and I cut it and nothing came off. But the week before, I'd taken off nearly a bucket, and I left it another 10 days, and I cut it again last week, and took off 3/4 of a bucket. So even when the temperature's relatively low, it still grows.
Yeah, and this weather now, as we're going through at this moment in time, we're on the 3rd of March. Yeah, it's good, isn't it? And I'm sure every green in the country is like, thank God we got a bit of warm weather coming through.
This time last year, it just rained.
Well, we had the
rain.
I remember last year we cut. It was nice, but it was just after like 2 weeks of rain, and we had one that nice day. We were like, we're going to cut it, and we cut it, and we had to stop probably 10, 11 times just to wash the machine because it kept kind of getting stuck, and it just.
But that's where that totally correct there. But now we have learned how to make that machine sharper, haven't we? And that will help if that happens again. But it's still hard work.
Well, it's even the kind of the roller at the front as well gets stuck, and that stops the grass cut. So you've got to, even cut. We always, even if it doesn't jump, we're still getting it off that green every 3-4 runs, up and down, just to wash it off, just so we know we're cutting properly.
We've got our green team. We also got a surround team, haven't we? There's a lot of work that goes on on a bowl screen across the country. We unfortunately got a large area. We've got a large area that needs to maintain. Sometimes having that one green in a small area more contained can be a little bit easier. But it's not as easy for us. And there will be other clubs out there who've got the same issue, who probably may have a surround team as well. So you've got yourselves all working on the green, and you've got other volunteers who do a great job tidying up the sides and everything else, and making everything trying to look pretty.
So that's hard work as well.
It is, yeah.
I've made a point in our club to step back from that, and I'm just concentrating on the green now, because you were finding that we were concentrating on the surrounds and not on the green.
You can't do both.
You can't do both.
No, it's too much work.
It takes at least 2-3 hours of decent work just on the green.
And maybe that's learning, or we can pass that sort of advice on to other clubs. If you've got an area surround, you get some volunteers for the surround area where you can do the weeding, do the cutting of the hedges and everything. Takes the pressure off the greens team for having to do that as well, So, thanks to our surround team as well.
We're very lucky.
They do a great job. So, how are we looking on the questions?
We kind of covered everything, really. I guess a big thank you to you, obviously, from us. I mean, obviously, you know how hard you have, and you do work for Bridgend, and obviously, thank you from us to all greenkeepers.
All greenkeepers,
clubs, who take the time off to be able to do what they do and make greens playable, really, because without you guys, you can't play.
There's not many clubs, I would have thought, even in the whole of the country now that are council greens.
No, they manage them themselves.
I can't think of any area.
I can't afford to have somebody managing them permanently, So, if you're members out there, appreciate your greenkeeper. Maybe one Saturday in the season, we should have appreciate the greenkeeper, buy him a drink.
Oh, I do have one more thing. Our annual Greenskeepers Bowls competition.
Oh, God.
I did want to say that.
We've done it once.
And who was the winner of that, Mr. Ken Taylor?
I can't remember.
It was me, I believe.
Oh,
I think.
I think
the picture is up on our
I
Facebook
think I
page.
forgot about that. 2 minutes after the game.
I know, and I did be doing one of the rounds as well. So
Well, we had a little discussion last week, and we were even thinking of having an annual Greenkeepers drink.
drink.
Yeah, drink and.
I'd like that.
Can
So,
I just
I'd
apologise to
like
everybody out there listening to these two babbling on
No.
about
We do have a good relationship, do we? But we always.
I know it was a good little competition, that, wasn't it?
It was lovely. Yeah, it was 2 what? 5 sets, wasn't it?
Five ends, yeah.
Sorry, there was one last thing, and we had touched on everything in it, but there's one last thing on it. Well, maybe not. Just your love for that developing of players, isn't it? You did just love it. We had touched on it, and we have.
Listen, the club's been going, 1952. Our club's been going since, isn't it? A long time. A lot of clubs have gone well over 100 years.
Yeah.
And there's been people all since 1952 trying to develop players in Bridgend and this and that. And if you can keep it, the whole thing I look at the club is we're just there for a short period of time. If we can make it better or improve it or keep it going, if nothing else, just keep it going, then it's got to be good for the future, isn't it?
You just jogged something that we spoke to Nicky Jones, who's been on. Yeah. We spoke to Ross, who's been on. We spoke to Amy, who's been on. We spoke to Ben Matthews, who's been on. And they've all said that there was somebody, when they started Bowls, there was somebody in the club who helped them. Yeah? All of them have said the unsung heroes who helped develop our current Welsh international players.
Well, when Adam comes on in 20 years' time, we'll ask him who is the first, and he'll say you. Right? So you'll be part of this podcast for a long time.
So I suppose it's come to wrap up time. Yeah. Thank you, Ken, so much for spending the last, I don't even know how long we've been talking.
Probably an hour or so.
Enjoyable. Can I ask you all, only one thing again, if you're enjoying what we're doing, please, on YouTube, subscribe. That will help us out a lot. And thank you very much if you're watching and listening.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
Cheers.